It started with a single sentence from a patient named Gerald. 75, widowed, a retired math teacher who used to tutor kids on weekends just to keep his mind sharp. He looked at me across the desk and said, "Doc, I don't know what's going on, but lately I just feel foggy. I can't focus. I forget things I never used to forget. It's like someone's pulled a thin sheet over my brain." Now Gerald was sharp. He still did crossword puzzles every morning. He read the newspaper cover to cover. He even helped manage the books at the local VFW hall. But there was something in his tone, something real. A subtle frustration. A quiet fear that he was starting to lose something important. Not his memory exactly, but his clarity, that light in the mind that lets you process, decide, feel awake and engaged in the world. He'd already seen a urologist. Labs came back clean. Brain scans looked normal for his age. The recommendation? Keep mentally active, reduce stress, and get better sleep. He laughed as he told me that. They might as well have said good luck. And that's when I asked him something most doctors still hesitate to ask. "Gerald, when's the last time you allowed yourself some private release? Just you, your breath, your body?" He blinked. "You mean, like, masturbation?" "Yes," I said, gently. "Exactly that." He chuckled, half embarrassed. "It's been a while. Years, maybe. I figured that part of life was done with." That moment, that exchange, is where we begin today. Because Gerald's story isn't rare. It's something I hear more and more, especially from men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. They feel cloudy. Detached. Not depressed exactly, not confused, but like they're thinking through molasses. Like they're no longer sharp, no longer crisp. And no one tells them that the solution might not be more puzzles or new medication, but a return to something so simple, so natural, and yet so heavily stigmatized, self-pleasure. So let me say it clearly, masturbation after 60 isn't just about sexual health. It's about brain health. And the connection between the two is stronger than you've ever been told. You see, the human body, especially the aging male body, is designed to operate in rhythms. Wake and sleep. Stress and recovery. Tension and release. And when one of those rhythms is blocked, like sexual expression, it doesn't just affect your mood or hormones. It affects your mind. Gerald didn't know this. He thought what he was feeling was just part of aging. That the slowing down of thought, the dulling of focus, the emotional flatness, it was just the price of getting older. But that's not entirely true. What he was experiencing was what happens when the body is no longer engaged in one of its most ancient, most human activities, the cycle of arousal and release. When we masturbate, especially when we do so intentionally, without guilt, without rushing, the brain experiences a flood of neurochemical changes. Not just the obvious ones like dopamine or oxytocin, but shifts that actually reset certain brain networks. There's a system in the brain called the default mode network. It's responsible for internal dialogue, daydreaming, memory recall. When this system is overly active, which often happens in aging adults, it leads to mental fatigue. That foggy feeling. That endless loop of overthinking and internal chatter that makes it hard to concentrate or feel present. During sexual arousal and orgasm, that system goes quiet. Just for a moment, but that moment matters. It allows the brain to reset. To return to a more efficient pattern. To turn down the noise and sharpen its focus. That's what Gerald didn't realize. That what he was experiencing wasn't just aging, it was an overstimulated brain without a healthy outlet for release. I gave him a new kind of prescription, not in a bottle, but in a mindset. I told him to give himself permission. To take time alone. Not as an act of fantasy or frustration, but as a gift. A moment of breath, of touch, of reconnection. And I asked him to do it mindfully. To not rush to the end, but to be present with the experience. To treat it like meditation. Like stretching. Like a tune-up for his nervous system. 2 weeks later, he came back with a grin. "I don't know what kind of voodoo you prescribed," he joked, "but I feel like someone polished my brain." It wasn't magic. It was biology he hadn't accessed in years. And that, my friend, is the hidden truth. That the very thing we've been taught to suppress or ignore in our later years may actually be the thing that keeps us sharp. That lifts the fog. That helps us sleep, think, and feel more clearly. In the next part of this video, I'll take you even deeper into this connection, how sexual release triggers a specific cascade of hormonal changes that reduce cortisol, enhance oxygenation to the brain, and even stimulate the growth of new neural pathways. But more than that, I'll share stories of other men, like Gerald, who rediscovered not just pleasure, but presence. Who found that their mental clarity wasn't fading because of age, but because they'd lost touch with something vital inside themselves. So if you've ever felt like you're slipping, like your focus isn't what it used to be, like your mind feels a little too quiet and a little too loud at the same time, stay with me. Because what comes next may just be the most surprising, most empowering health insight you've heard in years. When we left off, Gerald had just started to notice the light coming back on in his mind. Not from a new supplement. Not from a daily planner or brain games. But from something much older, much deeper. Something his body always remembered, even when he thought he had outgrown it. He gave himself permission to feel again, and in doing so, he reminded his brain that it's still part of a living, breathing, responsive system. You see, what happens during masturbation, especially for older adults, isn't just about pleasure. It's a physiological reset. A rebalancing. And perhaps most powerfully, a signal to the brain that it's still worth engaging with the world. Let's explore how this works on a deeper level. When arousal begins, slowly, gently, without pressure, the sympathetic nervous system, often known as the fight or flight system, initially activates. This isn't a bad thing. It means alertness increases. Heart rate picks up. Blood pressure rises slightly. You're focused. You're engaged. But as you approach orgasm and move into release, the body shifts. The parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, takes over. Cortisol drops. Oxytocin and endorphins flood the system. Breathing slows. Muscles soften. This shift doesn't just feel good, it brings your entire neurochemistry back into balance. For the aging brain, which is often stuck in low-level chronic stress, this is profound. Many older adults walk around in a state of quiet tension. They may not feel panicked, but their nervous systems are still on guard, bracing for loneliness, for discomfort, for sleep problems, for change. This wears down mental clarity over time. It reduces the brain's ability to prioritize, to focus, to remember. Masturbation offers a natural interruption to that pattern. It tells your nervous system, you're safe. You're connected. You can let go now. This letting go doesn't just help you relax, it opens up the mental bandwidth you didn't even realize you were losing. One of my other patients, a 69-year-old named Leonard, came to me frustrated. I'm eating right. I walk every morning. But I still feel flat. I get things done, but nothing sticks. I read the paper and forget what I just read. I talk to my kids and halfway through the conversation I feel like I'm drifting. We ruled out anything medical. No dementia. No vitamin deficiency. No medications interfering with cognition. So I asked him something different. Are you giving your body time to feel anything other than efficiency? He frowned. What do you mean? I mean, are you letting yourself experience pleasure? Physical. Sensual. Solo. He laughed. That's not really in my routine anymore. Maybe that's the problem, I said. Maybe your brain is tired of only being used for tasks. Maybe it's starving for feeling. He was skeptical, but open. I encouraged him to start small. Once or twice a week. No pressure to perform. Just breath, touch, and presence. I told him to do it at night, when the world was quiet. To treat it like a ritual, not a race. And when he returned a month later, the change was subtle but unmistakable. My memory's not perfect, he said. But I feel here again. Like I'm actually in the room with people, instead of floating next to them. That's the clarity we're talking about. When you reclaim this part of yourself, your mind begins to respond. Thoughts sharpen. Emotions soften. You remember why you walked into a room. You read something and it sticks. Conversations don't feel like chores, they become moments again. Not because you're younger, but because you're reconnected. There's another layer here that most men never talk about: shame. Not just about masturbation itself, but about feeling like you need it. That somehow, because you're older, you should be past the desire. But that shame acts like static in the brain. It interrupts flow. It clouds judgment. It creates anxiety, even if you're not fully aware of it. Masturbation, done with intention, melts that shame. It says, this part of me didn't die. It just got quiet. And when you give it voice again, the shame fades, and the clarity rushes in. And here's something else you might not expect. Men who begin practicing this regularly report better morning clarity. Why? Because orgasm before sleep releases prolactin and serotonin, chemicals that promote deep, restorative rest. And when sleep improves, so does memory, focus, and decision-making. The fog lifts, not just in the bedroom, but in the grocery aisle, in the doctor's office, in the middle of a conversation with a loved one. You become present again. So what does this actually look like? It looks like making space in your life, not just physically, but mentally. It looks like releasing the old rules that said this was something to be hidden, something childish, something shameful. It looks like sitting quietly, taking a deep breath, and letting your hands meet your body with care instead of urgency. It looks like trusting that what your body is asking for isn't wrong. It's wise. And you don't have to talk about it with anyone if you don't want to. But I'll tell you this, many of the men I've worked with find that as they reconnect to their own bodies, they become better partners, better listeners, and more emotionally available in their relationships. Why? Because masturbation done with presence builds emotional capacity. You're more patient, more grounded, less reactive. Your brain isn't trying to process stress while ignoring your needs. Everything works better when the system is in balance. And the best part? This isn't something that requires a new doctor's visit, a prescription, or a lifestyle overhaul. It starts with permission. With saying yes to something simple, something deeply human, and something your brain and your soul may have been quietly asking for. In part 3, I'm going to guide you through how to build this into your life, not just as a practice, but as a way of maintaining mental clarity for years to come. We'll talk about frequency, timing, how to stay consistent, and how to shift your mindset so this isn't just another task, but a return to yourself. Because you haven't lost your sharpness. It's still there. It's just waiting for you to clear away the static and let the light come back in. So now we arrive at the heart of this journey, not just the why behind masturbation and mental clarity after 60, but the how. Because once you understand the power of this practice, the next step is weaving it into your life in a way that's sustainable, nourishing, and free from pressure. This isn't about chasing youth. It's about feeding vitality. And more than that, it's about coming back to a version of yourself that feels more awake, more settled, and more present than you've felt in years. Let me tell you about a man named Alan. 78. A widower. Former engineer. Meticulous in everything he did, down to how he folded his socks. But emotionally, he was numb. His words, not mine. It's like the lights are on, he said, but everything's behind a glass wall. He hadn't felt truly connected to his body in nearly a decade. Not since his wife passed. He assumed the door to that part of his life had quietly closed. But as we began to talk, it became clear that his brain wasn't shutting down, it was starving. Starving for touch, for stimulation, for those quiet pulses of neurochemical electricity that only come from being fully engaged with oneself. I asked him gently, would you be willing to try giving yourself that space again? Not for sex. Not for memory. Just to feel? He was hesitant at first. But he tried. He started with just 5 minutes before bed. No goal. No pressure. Just breath, hands, and stillness. A few weeks later, he walked into my office and said, I feel like my brain is breathing again. That's what this is about. So let's talk about how you make this last, not as a one-time thing, but as a steady rhythm in your life. Think of it like watering a plant. You don't flood it once and walk away. You return again and again with care. And in return, it grows. Your mind, like that plant, needs regular moments of release to stay sharp, soft, and strong. Start by creating space. Not just physical space, though a quiet room, low lighting, and no distractions help, but mental space. Give yourself permission. That's the first real step. Tell yourself, this is good for me. This is allowed. This is care. Because once your mind relaxes around the idea, your body follows. Then, remove performance from the equation. You're not here to reach a finish line. You're here to arrive in the moment. To slow down. To feel your breath. To meet yourself gently. If climax happens, wonderful. If it doesn't, the benefits still come. The oxytocin still flows. The nervous system still resets. Many men I work with schedule this practice the way they would a walk or a good meal. A few times a week, depending on what feels natural. Some do it nightly as part of their wind-down routine. Others do it during the day, especially after moments of stress or mental fatigue. There's no single rule, only rhythm. What matters most is consistency. And let's address the occasional resistance that comes up. I feel silly. I feel too old. What if someone finds out? My answer is always the same. You are not silly. You are wise. You are honoring a truth about your body that many men go their entire lives never learning. That clarity isn't always found in books or pills, it's found in presence. And if someone were to find out, I'd hope they'd respond with respect. With curiosity. Maybe even with inspiration. Because the world needs more men who take care of themselves this way. Who lead by example, not by pretending to have it all together, but by being real about what it means to stay well. And if you're partnered, this doesn't have to be a secret. In fact, many couples who talk openly about solo pleasure end up closer, more intimate, and more at ease. Because the shame dissolves. The need for secrecy evaporates. And in its place comes trust. And if you're alone, you are not lacking. You are complete. Your hand on your own skin is not a poor substitute. It's a celebration of agency, autonomy, and self-love. I've had men tell me that after just a few weeks of consistent practice, they notice more than just clearer thinking. They feel more creative, more emotionally open, more tuned into the world around them. Why? Because the brain isn't being choked by suppressed tension. Because the body is no longer fighting for attention, it's being heard. And that, my friend, is the hidden clarity that comes from this kind of self-care. Not just sharper thoughts, but deeper peace. Not just improved memory, but greater presence. Not just better sleep, but more meaningful dreams. You begin to wake up not with dread, but with possibility. You start to notice your surroundings. You savor your coffee. You remember people's names more easily. You feel less scattered, less edgy, less disconnected. Because you've reconnected to the most essential relationship you'll ever have, the one between your mind and your body. So if you've been living in a haze, if your focus has felt dull, if your emotions have felt flat, if your days have started to blur together, this is your invitation to step back into the light. To create a simple, powerful habit that clears the mental cobwebs and brings you home to yourself. And as we wrap up, let me ask you to do something, 3 simple things. Click the like button if this video gave you even a glimmer of insight or hope. It helps others find this message. Leave a comment. You don't need to share your whole story, just say hello. Let others know they're not alone in this conversation. And subscribe. Because we're going to keep talking about the real things, the things no one else wants to say out loud, but every man over 60 deserves to hear. Because you're not done. Your mind isn't fading. You are not a ghost of who you used to be. You're still here. Still thinking. Still feeling. Still capable of clarity, connection, and joy. And sometimes, all it takes to remember that is the courage to reach out, quietly, gently, and remind yourself that you are still worth touching. That you are still alive.